Hey, powerful people. Many of us ask the uninspired questions of what do you do for a living? Where do you live? How are you doing? All these sorts of questions that many of us were just taught growing up based on conversations we've had. And now we use these questions with people we meet for the first time or that we haven't talked to in a while. We even use these same sort of questions with people that we talk to all the time. But these questions are really bad. They're not great conversation starters. They kind of hit a dead end. I don't know about you, but I've done this myself and led conversations with these questions. And the conversations fall pretty flat quickly. After about 2 or 3 minutes of going back and forth and just kind of answering these questions to each other, we just both kind of sat there awkwardly, not knowing where the conversation was going to go from there because neither of us really gained any insight into who the other person was based on those questions. So we didn't know where to go next, and we didn't know what each other's interests were at all, their personality, anything like that to be able to lean into the next part of the conversation. So we're going to look at some questions that you can ask that are a little more inspired, that make the other person talk without you having to say much at all, which some of you may love, and I love myself, as I call myself an observational extrovert. I love being around people, but I don't necessarily love talking all the time. We're going to ask some questions like, what was the best part of your week? So this sort of question starts off the foot on a positive note. It's the best. It's what gets them excited. When they look back at their week, we're not saying, oh, what was the worst part of your week and making them feel down about themselves and their situation. We're saying, what's the best part? What's the highlight? What gets you going based on this last week? So this question really helps us understand what they enjoy. So maybe the best part of their week was sitting at home, watching some movies, doing nothing, talking to no one. While someone like me, my best part of the week would probably be being out with people, going and playing golf together, or going on a hike, those sorts of things. So this question really opens them up, gets them talking about the best part of their week and excited about that, but it also shows their personality, whether they're an introvert, an extrovert, whether they like being outdoors, whether they don't, maybe some interests. Say maybe they watched the Lord of the Rings series at home for hours and hours on end. It gives you a glimpse into who they are. And honestly, a lot of times people just kind of keep talking, but even if they don't, you have a lot of really good information going forward on what kind of questions to ask, because now they've given you some of that information on the core of who they are, what they enjoy, to be able to lead that conversation farther. So another question you can ask is, what are some passion projects you're working on? So this really gets them opened up about things they're having fun with, things they're learning, things they're struggling with. Like when people ask me what I'm doing, I tell them about my bus and converting that. And even though I have background in construction, it's a big struggle actually taking on this project and pretty much doing all the work ourselves to figure out what needs to happen when. And building in a bus is a little different than building in a house, sealing up all the windows right now, which is difficult. So, but if you guys want to follow that, you can hit the link down below to see our YouTube channel for that. But these sort of questions are just really helpful to get them excited and gives you a glimpse as well into some interests they have and what they're doing potentially to have more impact in their world. You can finally ask the question of what makes you excited to be you? Now, this is a great question because it's so super open-ended in terms of how they want to answer. They can go in as much depth as they want, but the reason I love this question is because it really helps them think about who they are. A lot of people don't take the time to think about what makes them special, what makes them unique, what makes them excited to be them, what attributes, what things do they do, how do they impact people, all these sorts of aspects that they can think about to make them answer this question. So when you're asking this question, it's not only a great question for you to ask to make an impact on them, but it's also a great question for them to ask that they can go off later and think about. And when they're thinking about that question, they're thinking about you. So that is one great way that you can make an impact in your conversation that lasts outside of the conversation. So these sort of questions are broad in terms of who they are, but they're very specific as well in terms of how you're asking them. So you can see the difference in how was your day? Rather than good, you can say what was the best part of your week, and that expands their ability to answer that question. Hopefully this sort of line of questioning is something that you can use in the next day or two and going forward to be able to help you start these sort of conversations without the fear of thinking, oh, this conversation is going to dead end after a minute. I don't know what to say or talk about. It really helps you start these conversations and not necessarily have to say much at all, because once people get talking about things they enjoy, they tend to have a rabbit hole and just keep talking. Hopefully this was helpful for you. Please like and subscribe so you can see more of my content on how to communicate better and how to make more of an impact. And remember that you were made to create amazing things.